Hey, it's Chad Miles here, host of A Level Deeper. Last week, the world lost a bright, shining light when we lost our friend Nick Mundy. Nick had been going through a battle with cancer for many years. Of course, Nick was a guest on the show back in the fall of 2023, and I remember feeling sort of mesmerized after I had an interview with him in the best way possible. The way he opened up about his story and cut right through the surface level noise as he shared his experiences and what it felt like, and some beautiful truths about this human existence that we're all trying to navigate was incredibly powerful. I'll tell you, sometimes I find myself questioning why I continue to make this show, and I guess just wondering if it matters. And then something like this will happen, like losing Nick, and I'm reminded of what a blessing this conversation and recording is for Nick's family, his legacy, and for all of us. What a way to honor him. Nick's message of live and love boldly is such a simple and profound rally cry and a roadmap, if you will, to creating a meaningful life. So today I'm resharing that conversation I had with Nick from last fall because it feels important. It feels like a small act I can take to honor someone's legacy who had an immediate impact on me and my life. And after losing my father at a young age, I know what a treasure it is to have this conversation recorded for humanity to listen to and to hear the beautiful and wise words of our friend Nick Mundy. There's an addition this time, though. I've asked people who knew Nick to send in voicemails sharing a story, memory, or a message for Nick and his family. I've stitched all of those together and inserted them at the end of this episode, and you're going to want to stick around to hear them. I can promise you that. Ultimately, I hope it brings anyone who knew, respected, and loved Nick a bit of peace and maybe a gentle smile amongst the grief to know the impact Nick had on so many people. So, for the next hour and some odd minutes, I invite you to listen to a conversation full of hope, healing, and some beautiful reflections that we can all learn a lot from. This one's in honor and memory of Nick Mundy, a bright light that will surely be missed. Any questions for me?
I don't have a ton of questions. I typically try to walk in with no expectations and let the magic kind of flow. And so I'm set up for success, I feel like right now. I'm ready to do it.
I love it, man. That's been my approach to the shows as well. The first chunk of episodes were people that I knew, and now I'm getting into just asking for referrals and asking people like, hey, who do you know that I should interview? And so it's been fun getting into some of these newer interviews and not knowing people at all. And I'm sort of doing the same thing as far as I enter these. I think I have like 7 words written down about you, and I know a place that we could start. And then I just trust that we're gonna have a good conversation from there. So it's been a fun process so far.
I love it. Yeah, I former control freak, had this misconception that I was like the grand creator. I controlled everything. I didn't like the way I felt when I lived like that for a really long time. And so learning to let go and removing my expectations typically, because when those aren't met, that's when I'm most upset, right? I found that life has gotten infinitely better. And I don't feel this like, this tug of war inside of trying to control everything and everyone around me anymore. And so like I'm realizing, I'm like, hey, there's a lot of great things that go into just kind of going with the flow and seeing the route of least action. And as I continue to do that, the universe just keeps showing out, putting people and places and things in my lives at the exact divine timing that it needs to be. And so I just try to walk into every room just authentically me and excited about being here and the opportunity, and just let whatever happens happen.
That's so interesting to me because I would prescribe myself as a sort of fellow control freak, still very much wanting to be in control and working on my relationship with control and accepting that maybe the idea that maybe if I give up some of that control, maybe good things can happen. When did you first realize that maybe wanting to exercise all of this control wasn't a good thing in your life, or maybe it wasn't taking you the places that you could go without being in so much control?
I realized this when I was 28. 2018, a very pivotal year for me. And I had moved from Cincinnati, Ohio for the first time, moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota. My twins weren't even 1 year old yet, and I had a 2 year old going on 3. I was getting moved up at my company. I had just gotten a regional manager position. I had got a relocation package, and I was the man. I'm like, look at me controlling my destiny. Like, I called my shot. I said I was going to make it from the front desk as a receptionist, lowest paid man in the building, then driving a truck for a couple years, finishing top of the country, working through sales all the way. And I'm like, I'm the guy. And that was just the surface. That was the mask that I was wearing for everybody else. At home, my life was in shambles, just dealing with addiction and substance use disorder and mental illness, and really not understanding, or not even having enough clarity or awareness in the moment to understand who I was and what I was doing and how it was impacting myself and everyone else around me. And so I had a brief moment of clarity on May 30th, 2018. I volunteered to go to in-person rehabilitation because I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was tired of seeing my wife, in tears in the morning, replaying all the events of, either what I said or did, or what I didn't do, maybe not even coming home to my family in a new city. And it's just like, man, I hate how I feel. And all of my 3 solid foundations, I'd say my life, being alive, and my wife, my family, and then my job. All 3 were still intact, but all 3 had splinters all throughout the foundation. And I knew that if I didn't act that day in that moment, that little window was going to close on me, and that one of those pillars, if not all 3, were going to break pretty damn soon. And so when I got to inpatient rehab and had gotten about a week, of detox in me, and starting to come back online a little bit as far as, who is Nick Mundy? How do I want him to be received? How do I want people to feel when they're in his presence? And having that clarity allowed me to really realize the way that I had set up my life and the way that I was running the show. It was a shit show, dude. It was horrible. And it was really painful emotionally, mentally, and even physically. I felt horrible all the time. And all the things I was feeling, I can tell you that my wife was probably feeling twice as much. And at rehab, I realized they gave me an opportunity to construct a different idea of a higher power. It didn't have to be the one that I was told and prescribed as a kid going through Catholic and Christian schools throughout my whole childhood. So I really started to give myself permission to really remold the Nick Mundy. And as I realized that I wasn't in control and that there was something else that had been guiding me, something that I wasn't comfortable calling it God then. I was still very cynical and still very upset with my previous idea of God. And, but I had promised myself that I was going to give everything that I gave to my addiction. I was going to give that to my sobriety. And that meant no matter how foreign of an idea, I was going to lean into that, because previously my way wasn't working. And so when they explained to me that what letting go really looked like letting go and putting your faith in something else and putting your trust into something else, that was when I realized that the way that I had been running the show was abysmal. And I wanted to try anything. I'm like, I don't know if this guy or this mythical figure that you're talking about is going to help me out, but I can tell you, I can't help me. So I'm willing to let that, have the show, and we'll see how it works. I'm gonna just get out the way and keep my mouth closed for a little bit. And what I realized is, as I continue to live that way, life didn't get easier. My life's gotten a lot harder, actually, but it has gotten infinitely better. And that's why I say I'm not in control of the show. I don't want to be anymore either.
Take me back to this moment or this time where you check yourself into rehab and you kind of come to this realization of like, I'm not helping myself, or I can't help myself. I just got to imagine that was a difficult conclusion to come to. And I think oftentimes as men, we can have this, we're supposed to be able to figure it out ourselves. We're supposed to, and I'm putting air quotes if you can't see me, we're supposed to be able to have these answers. We're supposed to not have to say, you know what, I think I need help and I can't do this on my own. Take us through coming to that conclusion that I can't help myself, and I need something else.
What I had seen growing up, and quite honestly, I'm the first man in my family to deviate from drug and alcohol use and to try a completely new way of living. And for years, I saw people around me use alcohol as like as a coping mechanism to soothe the anxiety or the frustrations, or to relax, you name it. And my dad is still battling with alcoholism, and he was always a very functioning and never missed a day of work. Has had two very beautiful full careers, maybe actually probably even more than that. And he was a Marine. He was the captain of Cincinnati Fire Department, and he was the head of security for Great American Financial here in Cincinnati for years. And I never saw him like out of control. I never saw it. And so I'm like, he's got money, he's doing well, he's got the nice suit, he's sharp, he's got a brand within the community. Like, he can handle his shit. Why can't I handle mine? I felt like there was something wrong with me. And so that if I needed help, that made me weak. That made me less than. That meant that I wasn't able to prioritize or handle my business like the rest of the men around me, or the men that I had seen. After a while, I started to realize, I'm like, I'm the only one living with this. Like, none of them are living in my house or in my body, or waking up with these thoughts, or working with these thoughts, or going to bed with these thoughts, or crying, thinking about suicidal ideation, because I'm just so confused as to why I can't stop hurting myself and others around me every time I take a drink. Like, why can't I just leave the bar at 8? Like, I told you I was coming home at 8. I really wanted to be home, but it's now 8 a.m. the next day, and everyone around me is hurt and scared and confused, and me as well. And when I got really to the point realizing that nobody was going to come and save me, and that it didn't matter what anyone else thought of me at that point, where I was like, if I don't do something about this, there's not going to be there won't be any Nick here. There won't be this full family unit. And I can't worry about what that looks like right now. I just have to do what feels like the right thing to me. And so I honored my own inner healer, my own inner knowing for the first time, and chose me instead of what everyone else was going to think. I was consumed with, what's work going to say? You've been a top performer your whole time there. If they find out you're an addict, you're done. You're never going to get promoted. You'll never be able to come back to work. Like, all of these stories are going through my head. And I just realized one day, like, if I don't try another way of living, I'm not going to be here. And so, like, I just have to at least give this a shot. And if that makes me less of a man, whatever, at least my family will have me. And what really got me in the doors of rehab was seeing my best friend, who I've known since 6th grade. We were best friends since 6th grade. He had gone to drug and alcohol inpatient rehab about a year before. So he had a year of sobriety under his belt. And the thing that I admired most about him, man, was that he never shoved it in my face. He never said, "Oh, you got to go get sober because, like, this is the best way of living." Like, or the way you're doing this now is so messed up. You got kids and a family. Like, you should do what I did. He never once said that. But what I saw and what I heard is what got me curious. I saw a guy pushing himself to new physical limits, getting out of his comfort zone, doing Spartan races, skiing, doing cold plunges. And I'm like, you really happy? I'm thinking, like, okay, like, this is a flavor of the month. But it kept going, and it was consistent. And every time I talked to him on the phone, I could hear my friend, not the like, the alcohol covered or drug infused friend that I had been hearing on the phone for years and spending time with. This was my childhood friend that was back. And I remember telling him just what it was that I was experiencing, and how I had just, I tried to stay home around Memorial Day weekend, that 2018. I told myself I was only going to have champagne. I think I blacked out at home. about like 8 or 9 p.m. I was naked in the bathroom upstairs. And my wife had taken pictures of me on my phone so that like, I could see what it really looked like. She never shamed me or anything, but it was like, and it was on my phone. She never said anything, but when I woke up the next day and I just saw, I'm like, dude, you can't even blame anybody. You can't blame any influences. This is you. This is who you are and what you're doing and what you are choosing. And so I called my buddy who's also named Nick, and I told him where I was at. I told him I was willing to do anything. He called up a phenomenal facility, Hazelden Betty Ford, and told me that I lived only about 45 minutes from their one of their best clinics that they have in the nation. And I just asked him, is what you have real? Because you look happy, man, and I haven't felt happy in a long time. And he's like, it's real. And guess what? Work will probably understand, and they're probably going to get your back. And anybody else who doesn't support it, probably just don't need them in your life at this season right now. Even hearing that, I still was a little bit hesitant. I remember doing the intake session. I left work on the Tuesday that I went back to work that week, and during lunch, I went and did a intake session just to answer some questions honestly for the first time in my life, to talk about what my use looked like, how often, what were my drugs or drinks of choice. And I shared that with this counselor, and I told her, I was like, but I'm thinking of just doing outpatient because, I've got 3 kids, I also have this big job and I'm pretty important. They need me. And she's like, yeah, with your continued use of the last 9 years and you taking benzodiazepines every day for 9 years, Nick, you try to come off of this, which it sounds like you have, you're gonna have a pretty horrible time and you could seize up and die. And so your options are, you can either really detox in the hospital and then go back home and try to make your own recovery, or you can go to an inpatient program and they can give you the tools and the resources and around the clock care that you need. And they can also give you therapy. They can give you psychiatry, and you can relearn how to live. And I'm like, but you know what, man, my twins are turning 1. So I would, but like, I can't, I don't want to leave my wife. So I call my wife on my way back to work, and my wife's name is Shelby. She is phenomenal. And I call her and I'm like, babe, you know what? I did the intake session, but they don't understand. I can't do inpatient. I have to do the outpatient because like I've got this job and everything. They're telling me I need inpatient. I was like, but I'm not missing the boy's birthday. She was like, I don't think they're going to remember this birthday. They're not going to remember you being there for their first birthday. And I really think this would be good for you if it's what you want to do. And I don't want you to worry about that. Like, I'd rather you go ahead and knock this out so you can be here for all the rest of their birthdays. That was when I was like, all right, I'm ready to give this a try. I'm ready to give this a try because, man or not, how I'm feeling is indescribable. And I don't know if I can make it another day or another week.
What was your perspective? You talked about this 9-year period where you're dealing with addiction. I mean, did you have sort of the self-awareness or understanding of noticing or seeing how bad it maybe truly had gotten? Do you feel like you had that awareness?
I didn't have that awareness, or I think from what I saw growing up and the way that we binge drank in my community, it was like blacking out was like, that was the way to do it. It's like, if you didn't black out, you weren't partying hard enough, or you weren't drinking. In college, I was a bartender, and some of these things, you just write them off. It's just, we're just in college. It's just fun. Right. Yeah. But when I graduated from college and then, I got a full-time job, I was still doing the same things, just losing my car, and I'm barely making it to work, and like, just skating by and like, dodging bullets. And I continued to do that for years and years and years. And I'll tell you, the thing that really kept me in it, man, was when I was 23, I started getting sick. I started having heart pains, heart palpitations. Like, I felt like my heart was literally skipping a beat sometimes. And I didn't want to be seen as a hypochondriac. And I also didn't want to know what was really going on. And so I just signed it up, marked it off as like a pec type of pain or a pec strain or something like that. Throughout the next year, from 23 to 24, I went 13 months without a diagnosis, but I had surgery probably 3 or 4 times. I think I had 3 bone marrow biopsies. I had lost about 49 pounds over the course of 13 months. and my lymph nodes were bulging from my neck, and I just kept getting sick, worse and worse, and I couldn't get a straightforward diagnosis from anybody. I was very fearful of dying, very scared. Going a year without answers, like, get pretty daggone depressed, and eventually, after a while, you kind of feel like, I don't know if I'm going to make it out of this. And so my coping mechanism was to drink, was to numb. And so what was college, just college behavior, now became like my crutch. And also, I was like, they don't blame you. They're not going to blame you. I mean, if when I was going through this, it's like, let him live, let him enjoy his life. And so that was what I told myself. I continued to make up stories to protect myself around my addiction. I knew the way I was living wasn't right. And I had a deep fear of leaving life prematurely and not having ever really tapped into my authentic self, or leading the life that I knew that I was capable of leading. And so it was really scary there for a while, but I continued to just make excuses. And I also, my wife would point out things. Shelby would tell me about how, it was impossible to drag me out of the club, or how she saw me doing this, or she heard me doing this, or how we got in this fight, or how I said this horrible thing to her. And instead of hearing that and receiving that, I always used how much money I made, or I used look at all these things here. Look at all that. Look at the house. Like, look at the house. We always have money. Like, you can't say anything. I took her voice away from her and used my social status and false pride, the things that were filling me up, the things that people were telling me about the value that I brought to the organization and all of those things. That's where I was getting my worth from, not from who I was at home. For years, I just probably turned a blind eye to it. I also didn't know that it was addiction. I didn't realize that there was a disease of addiction. Towards the end of me drinking, I really thought I was a bad person. I thought that I was morally flawed. I'm like, well, how else can I not keep this promise? I've told her a million times that I'm going to come home at this time, and every time I don't do it. And so it seems like I'm just a bad guy to me. And that was what I had thought, and that's what I had, come to believe. But I made up a million different excuses to protect myself. Oh, I don't eat dessert. I drink my alcohol at the end. Like, just the stories that I would tell myself were so elaborate. Anything to just protect that thing that was producing the most amount of shame.
The social status part of that is interesting to me. How easy it can be. Well, if we're successful professionally, if we have the money, or if we have the status, then it seems to the outside world, it's kind of like everyone's applauding. And it's like, well, Nick seems like he's doing great. I mean, why would we be concerned about him? Look at what he's doing, and he's functioning well. And yet people don't get to come home with you or see that after the fact. But I think it can be so sometimes easy for us personally, or as we look at other people, as we encounter other people in the world, to just kind of make assumptions about, oh, well, I mean, they're doing well professionally, and so they're checking all of the right boxes that, from a societal status standpoint, if they're checking all the right boxes, then they must be doing great. They must be doing well. And I guess that's just an unfortunate assumption that I feel like we tend to make.
Yeah, and that was exactly the story that I was bought into. And it was also what I saw a lot of around me. So I worked with a lot of men who were workaholics and who spent 50, 60 plus hours working for the company every week. And like, that was like a badge of honor, getting your stock, making sure you got the nice suit and then get into the custom suit with him. All of those things were the things that I cared about. And those were the people that were telling me how great I was. So it didn't matter. Like, to me at that time, sadly enough, it didn't matter what anyone at home thought of me, because the rest of the world was buying the mask version of me. Yeah, I didn't want to feel like that anymore. And I wanted to see, is there another version of me in there? Because I feel like everything that Shelby would tell me that I said or did the next day, I mean, there would be times I'm like, she's got to be making this shit up. But clearly, when you turn the phone around and it's like, no, this is you, time stamped. And there wasn't just one of those situations. There was many of those situations. And I could tell an embarrassing story after embarrassing story. But let's just say I fit the criteria of addict. And for years, I didn't want to face what it was going to take to overcome that. I knew that I was going to have to come clean on some things. I knew I was going to have to tell the truth, which I hadn't done in a really long time. I knew that I was going to have to step away from some relationships. I knew that I was going to have to turn everything over. And instead of doing that, I chose the familiar feeling, which was the suffering that I was creating for myself. Rather than walk towards the light, I stayed in the darkness because the darkness was more comfortable. And then eventually, as I took a step and I took another step, I got more curious about what it felt like to get to the other side of that light, because that familiarity of the darkness, eventually I realized, I'm like, all of that suffering is being caused by me. The pain that I experienced because of my medical condition and battling chronic disease, that comes with walking that journey. But I was suffering because I was pouring kerosene on everything else and fanning the flames of it by simply avoiding talking about it or unearthing these things.
Take us to then you're going through this rehab experience, and you talked about this process of sort of redefining who you wanted Nick to be and the person that you wanted to become. As you thought about that, who was the person that you wanted to become? What were some of the characteristics or qualities or things that you aspired to and that you wanted to be that you felt like you weren't at that time?
Yeah, I wanted to be dependable. I wanted to be trustworthy. I wanted to be at peace. I lived in a state of hypervigilance for years. I mean, head on a swivel, constantly people out to get me. A little bit of delusion in there. I mean, when I said like the mental illness thing earlier, I had gotten so consumed by this mental illness and this like substance use disorder, I had lost the ability to look people in the eye. And I realized that, the age of 28, I'm having conversations with complete strangers or making a sales call or something, and I can't look at this person in the eye. And I didn't know what it was at the time until I started to do some of this trench work, really, started to understand why was I behaving the way I was behaving, and why was my body responding in certain ways. And I'll tell you, it was because I was afraid of being found out. I was afraid that someone was going to look into my eyes and see through the mask and see that I wasn't who I said I was. And so I really wanted to be someone who could keep the promises that he made to himself and others. And I had never done that. I also wanted to be a really great father and a really phenomenal husband. I wanted to be more loving. I wanted to be kind. And I don't think I wasn't many of those things. I think other people would probably say that I was, but I'll tell you that it was fake. It was an act. It was all an act. I was always acting for whoever was in front of me. And I was exhausted. Like I said, I was going to give everything to that journey that I gave to my addiction. And if I did half as good in sobriety as I did in addiction, I'd probably be really good in the recovery world as well. So
yeah, love that. I love that. That idea of being seen is an interesting one. Not looking people in the eye, sort of in that fear that someone might actually see you. They might actually see that maybe there is something behind that mask, and maybe you are going through something or suffering through something. It's just sort of that like backwards thing of that could have been the thing that could have been the most helpful to you, or maybe help to save you, was for someone to truly see you and see that there was pain beyond the mask. And yet, there's that internal part of you that it sounds like that didn't want to actually look at people, and you didn't want to be seen. You didn't want that part of you, I imagine, to sort of be uncovered, right?
No, I didn't want to be found out, because if people found out who Nick Mundy really was, they were going to they were going to be in for a rude awakening. It was not the guy that they saw during the day. Completely different animal at night.
Hey, it's Chad here, and this is an ad for this show. I want to personally say thanks for tuning into the podcast. Whether this is your first episode or you've been here for a while, it means a lot that you're here. I'm not asking you for money. Actually, I'm asking for you to take a small action to help grow the show. More specifically, there's 3 things you can do to help grow the show and spread meaningful conversations like the ones that we have here. First is to leave a rating or review for the show on the platform that you're listening on. It takes about 10 seconds and can make a big difference. Number 2 is to subscribe or follow the show on whatever platform you're listening on, just so that you make sure you get notified of each episode that's published. Lastly, number 3 is to share the episode. Whether you send a text to a friend, talk about the episode at your next book club, or make a post on social media, sharing goes a long way to help. So thanks again for listening, and thanks in advance for taking a small action to help the show. Okay, back to the episode. The Nick Mundy of today that I'm getting the chance to talk to sounds a lot different than the Nick Mundy of 2018 that you're describing. Tell me about, as we are 5 years removed from, that experience and that day when you made that decision to go into rehab, and you made the decision to say that I don't think I can help myself and I need to seek help. As you're 5 years removed from that, I mean, it seems like in the conversation that we're having and the person that I'm getting to meet, that you've made immense progress and you've fulfilled a lot of those things that you wanted to become. How do you see yourself now?
Best way that I can describe myself now is what I always wanted to be. I am who I say I am. I am as presented. I am a genuine, authentic human being. And the best thing about that is that if you were to ask my wife, Shelby, or if you were to ask my mom, or if you were to ask my sister, the people that know me in and out, secrets and all, and get to see me when I'm not on Instagram or not on social or anything, they would all tell you that he is exactly who he says he is. He does the work every single day. He's constantly trying to get better, and he's constantly trying to help everyone else around him that wants to get better. He helps them to be better as well. I could tell you that it has been continuous road of intentional work every single day, especially over the last 5.5 years since going through that, man. I've had cancer 3 times now. And those foundational tools and resources and skills that I gained early in recovery are things that I have been sharpening every day, and I've never stopped once. And because I gave myself the gift of recovery, and I gave myself the gift of sobriety, I am now able to thrive through some of life's biggest challenges. And I can do it with my spirit intact. And I can also do it walking out of the other side of the fire each time better, more whole, wiser. I've learned not to run from my pain. I've learned to lean into it. I've also learned that that hardship is probably the best teacher that I've ever had in my life. I know who I am and I know what I'm capable of. I feel like I have been battle tested over and over and over again. And so today, the guy sitting in front of you is someone who gets his worth and his value from himself. I don't need external validation anymore. And that's a big piece of that is because I've consistently done the work every single day. That removes a lot of that, imposter syndrome, when you really are who you say you are and you do the work every single day. I mean, there's still times where the imposter syndrome comes in and I can remind myself, no, that's not even the case. You really live this. And so when someone tells me about the light that they see in me, or the way that I've impacted them, or the way that I've influenced them, or how much something I said meant to them, and then they shared it with other people, I'm always taken aback, and I'm always just intrinsically overwhelmed with joy, because I'm like, that is what I always wanted. That feeling of being at peace comes from me showing up as who I say I am. And I've learned to cultivate joy and meaning and fulfillment in my life in the face of adversity. And so, I've done it time and time again. And so that is the thing today that just fires me up. And so I gave my life to coaching. A lot of the things that I learned in rehab, and then going to AA for a couple of years, and then therapy for years and years and years consistently, I realized that I'm best equipped to help that old version of me. And it wasn't about money anymore. My values and the things that really drive me, it wasn't about money. It wasn't about status. It wasn't about things. It became about influence, positive influence. It was about having an impact, a lasting impact, one that, you can leave your legacy on, and having a lasting impact in my community and on the lives of anybody that, I got a chance to sit with or share space with. and then about being of service to my fellow human being. Anybody who's dealing with a hurt, habit, hang up, or who feels like they're struggling or that they're lost or that they're too broken from saving. That's what I'm all about. I'm all about using my life experiences to allow other people to find that healing in them and to remind them that they're not too far gone and it's not too late to reinvent yourself.
Tell me more about this work. You know, as you say, I'm committed to doing the work every day, and you've learned about some of these tools. Illustrate for us a little bit more of like, what does that work look like that you are doing and that I'm imagining you're instilling in some of your clients that you're coaching. What is the work?
For me, doing the work looks like being honest and taking inventory of my actions and my words, being really thoughtful about the words that leave my mouth. Is it going to add value or is it going to detract value? And I really stop to pause and think before things come out of my mouth now. The work looks like apologizing when you're wrong and admitting it and taking ownership and trying to make things right and not holding grudges, not being resentful or angry or, retaliative. And so choosing love, for me, that's what that looks like. And that's one that I have to work on every single day. That's doing the work. Breath work, really learning to healthily impact my nervous system, to stay away from that hypervigilance, like being in flight or fight all the time. So doing some really good breath work and being intentional about doing that every day, making sure that I'm breathing from my diaphragm and getting a belly full of air and not breathing from my chest. It looks like journaling. Journaling is a great way to practice the metacognition, where you're writing out your thoughts and then you can see your thoughts reflected back to you. And I often will do that if I've got something that's really weighing heavy on me, writing things down and giving it a little time to marinate. And if I still feel like saying what I wrote out, and if I think it's going to add value to the person's life or if it's going to help me to heal, sharing that. And if not, crumbling it up and throwing it away and not saying it. It looks like picking up the phone and telling on myself if I'm having, a sick thought about like potentially drinking, if I'm having a thought about, which I haven't had any thoughts about drinking in a really long time. I've been, absolved of that urge to drink, which has been great. Actually kind of repulsed by it. So that's also another great thing for me now. But it looks like shit. Like even if I have a dream, I don't want to drink, but still, that's the difference. Those were the things that I used to keep in. I'm like, oh, that's not a big deal. No, I'm going to tell my wife. I'll just share it with her. She knows I'm not going to run out of here, but I know that if I'm honest and I continue to share these things, well, they don't get to grow roots and then start to flower in here. Cause I feel like that's what happens is as I start to keep things in, it starts to build up and it's going to have to come out at some time. So if I have a dream about something or even, going through cancer, you get prescribed a lot of different medicine. And sometimes they'll give you some pain medicine if you're like really hurting. And I've experienced, a lot of pain on this journey. And that looks like sharing that with your doctors and letting them know that you already have plans in place and that your wife is going to help you administer if you need help administering your medication and removing the pride. Like, I'm a man, I can take care of yeah. But at the same time, I don't need to do that. That's why I have people around me that love me, that I can pass that off to, that can help me. So I'm not even tempted by it. Doing the work also looks like taking care of my body, taking care of my mind. So exercising, eating well, choosing things that are nourishing, that are gonna add value to my life, that are conducive to my overall well-being, staying hydrated, drinking plenty of water. I've got my supplements, mantras, little things around the house everywhere. Like, do the work, trust the process. And then I've got my triangle here. And these are the things that, this is like the center of my compass. I let those be my guides and I put those things around often. It looks like reading, bibliotherapy is huge. I have learned so much from reading, but the thing I do with reading is I don't just read the book. Like, I'm studying when I read. I believe applied knowledge is power, not, knowledge. It's not just the knowledge. It looks like today telling my wife, Shelby, how I really felt about her in the moment. Like, I love you because love is your default. And I can see that for you. And it's still not my default, even though I choose it daily. seeing how effortless it is for her to be willing to lean like a helping hand. Right now, we're in a position of receiving and getting all the help we possibly can to get through this this third season with cancer. And we had a friend who was in a place of need and needed, a place to stay for a little bit. Well, just, I'd say a day or two while they're going across the country. And Shelby doesn't think twice. She's like, you guys can stay with us. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, why didn't that come to me first? Like, but you know what? It's okay, because that's why we have each other. And she has been my greatest teacher. She has shown me time and time again what unconditional love is, what that means to choose love. And so I shared that with her today on the way to my oncology appointment because, well, I don't want to delay that. I want to share that with her right now. I don't want to delay any gratitude. And that all of that looks like doing the work. And I could continue to go on, but typically it's me doing the harder thing. The last example I'll give you is because I'm an athlete. I would say that, I'm on the cusp of becoming an endurance athlete. I want to ride. I love to cycle. I enjoy running, even if it doesn't love my knees. I don't know even if they don't love it. I enjoy getting out, hitting trails. I feel like I'm a pretty good swimmer, and something that I've had as a wild goal for myself is to become a triathlete. And I keep training for it. Every time I get outside of, the world of cancer, I start training. I start getting back into it. And historically, I've gotten knocked down each time that I've gotten back into the best that I'd ever been. But I keep training for it because it's something that just lights me up, and I love to push myself, and I want to do that hard thing. And I also love showing myself what I'm capable of, because every time I put my mind to something, I put my body to a new limit that once I told myself was previously impossible. And so putting something out there that pulls me out of my comfort zone and doing things that I know that are going to lead to transformation and growth, doing the work. Everywhere I look today, I feel like I see the quick fix. And a lot of my clients come to me and they're like, how long is it going to take? When does it get better? and it's hard to not come from a place of, using my own story with that, because, this is about the client and not about me and my life story. But, for me, I don't know that it necessarily, I don't know that it does. I do the work without the promise of a reward, because I like how I feel when I'm on the journey and I'm doing it. Choosing to do the work has led me to have the most amazing life experience that I've had. I've squeezed every freaking drop out of life every day. Cancer has blessed me with perspective and this mindset that, has carried me through and through and through. And someone the other day told me that your perspective can either be your prison or it can be your passport. And my perspective for years was my prison. And then I started to undo that. I started to undo it. And then I gave myself permission to rebuild a new perspective. And now my perspective and the lens that I see life through now, it's a whole new world. It's a world filled with possibility. And I'm like, when I achieve this remission, when I cure my body of this disease, watch out, because I'm coming. I'm coming.
Can you tell us a little bit about, as within the last probably 3 or 4 weeks, as you and I have been coordinating to schedule this, I think is when your most recent cancer diagnosis was. And, you had just reached out to me and say, hey, I'm overwhelmed right now. I mean, can you explain to us a little bit, as you've now, this is, as you said, your third time going through this. So I imagine maybe the perspective's a little bit different, maybe not. Can you tell us a little bit about when you receive news like that, what does go through your mind and what happens?
I believe it's going to be unique to everyone. So I just want to make sure I preface this by saying this is my take on it. But early on in this journey, when I would receive tough news like that, I would be completely derailed. Get derailed. I go back to old self-soothing behaviors, whether they, are good for me or not. I would just be overwhelmed with any little negative language throughout the report. And I would just zoom in on it. And then I'm Googling stuff and then I'm anxious because now I'm living for 6 months down the road. I'm living for a year down the road. And I'm starting to think about all the things, how I'm going to feel and how much it's going to hurt. And then I realized, like, man, I am robbing myself of today's present, which is this present moment. Like, I'm not even here. That's the same thing I was doing when I was drinking. I was here physically, but mentally and emotionally, I was everywhere else but with my family. Same thing. And when I feel that, I have to rein myself back in, because now I'm shortchanging myself and I'm shortchanging my family. I cannot allow my cancer to be the main character of my story. The cancer is not the main character of the story. I am, Nick Mundy is, and the cancer is a portion of the story, but that's not what the story is about. So I can't give all of my time, energy, and focus to that. The other thing that I do, man, the reason I'm able to bring myself back down to neutral, or to like my baseline, is realizing that the only thing that the worrying is going to change is my health. And so I try not to worry too much about the things that are in the future, because also I don't even know if I have 6 months. None of us do. But what good does it, what good does that do for me to start planning around 6 months and thinking as if like I'm going to be in this place and I have no idea? I root my faith in the facts, and the facts are, I still have everything I need to win the day today. I'm supported. I am loved. I've got energy. Outside of having cancer, I have a very healthy, strong, able body. My mind is clear. I eat well. I drink well. I sleep well, consuming all my supplements. I'm watching my stress. I'm managing, my emotions. Those are all the things that I can do. And then I know my care team is doing the best that they can do. Right there is where I leave it, because that's that control piece. I used to think like, if I went and got my blood drawn and then my white blood cell count was low, I would feel like a loser. Like, how are you still low, Nick? Newsflash, there's nothing that I'm going to do here at the house, no matter how bad I want my white blood cells count to climb. That's not how that works. So let's not put all of my energy or focus into that basket. And I really just try to take things in stride and really live in the moment. And I know we hear a lot about that, right now, but I'm saying I get to live in the moment because of this perspective. I realize that, things could change tomorrow. I walk into the doctor appointment and I get a new schedule almost every time. And that kind of stuff irks me, because there's things that I want to do. I want to be dependable. I want to be able to put dates on my calendar weeks in advance and know that I can be there. But for the season of life that I'm in right now, I just have to be flexible. I just have to pivot. And I know that my current circumstances and situation are not going to always be like this. And so I try to remind myself of those things and realize that no matter what life continues to throw me, I continue to be supported and have everything I need to get through that challenge. And until I see otherwise, that's what I'm going to continue to put, my faith in.
I think about how sometimes we have these things that come into our lives that I think, at least initially, might seem bad. For you, that might be cancer diagnosis. For me, that was when my dad died when I was 17 years old. These things happen in our lives, and it's easy to think, oh, I wish this wouldn't have happened. And yet here I am still 12 years later, still reflecting and gaining different perspectives. And so much of my perspective about my life has changed in a really positive way, about, those same kind of ideas of like, my time is finite and I want to make the most of it. I want to, I throughout the course of this conversation, I guess I just keep coming back to, you end your emails with "live and love boldly." I just think that's such a beautiful saying. And I feel like I can see that in you. I can see that bold is such a strong word and such an amazing word. And I see that you are living your life, you're willing to love, and you're doing it in this bold fashion. And I feel like all of these things that you've been through in your life, I've got to imagine have helped you kind of, get to this point and build you up to who you are. Some of these good things, quote unquote, or some of these more difficult things, I think that they all shape us. And that live and love boldly is a beautiful, beautiful saying.
Thank you for saying that, man. That, I feel like that's kind of like my soul's contract, is to live and love boldly. And those words came to me while I was fighting cancer for the first time in 2021. I looked at that time. I had just, I was really like, I had just gotten healthy physically, and I was like in really good shape, and I was like, training twice a day. And then when I got sick, I wasn't able to do that anymore. And instead of being so down about not being able to work out, I started to think like, well, maybe this is happening for me. Maybe this is a time where I need to level myself up spiritually. Maybe I need to really focus on something else that I'm avoiding by pouring myself into all this physical work. Maybe I need to level myself up emotionally. Those words, live boldly, love boldly, they just seem to like run through, like it was like an ad campaign that was like running through my mind. And what that means to me, live boldly, experiment with your life, take chances, try new things, try a new way of living, take a different route, explore the path less traveled, be willing to break away from the herd of what everyone else is doing and honor yourself. And that's what I was living boldly. I started Mundy Mindset in December of 2021, but it was as a result of seeing so much turmoil in the world. And after George Floyd was murdered, I had just moved home from Minneapolis. So I was there, I think, like the week before, and then was here in Cincinnati. Yeah. And I hated the way that I felt. I was out here protesting, and my kids were out there with me and my wife. And I just saw so much animosity and anger. And I'm like, I just want to change their mind. And my friend Nick dawned on me, who am I to try and change somebody's opinion just by yelling louder, or just by like, trying to tell someone what to do via social media and getting into a shouting match? That's not going to work. Nobody changes their mind like that. How did I get here? And I'm like, well, I saw someone model the behavior. I saw someone live it. He was living boldly. I saw him like doing things that were, that took some courage and all those things. I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. I'm like, nah, if he can do it, you can do it. And so I remember at that time thinking, I need to be the change that I wish to see in the community. And before I can try to change anybody else's mind, let me see if I can change mine. And so I started living boldly. I started doing things that really pulled me out of my comfort zone. I started challenging myself physically, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually. And it was just like, I felt like a cheat code for living is what it felt like. Like I was getting a lot of joy and a lot of momentum, and my energy was growing. My brand was growing. And then I could start to see this like kind of ripple effect by simply showing up and modeling the behavior that you wish to see, or that you wish others, could get a taste of. They were more interested by my actions and by seeing me consistently day in and day out. And that was like the first clue that, okay, maybe this could be something else. And so living boldly for me is something that I feel like that is my recipe to dying well. In order to die well, you must live well. We're all going to go at some point, either gradually or suddenly. And none of us get to necessarily choose that. How can I ensure that I leave this life well? If I live well, and if I live boldly, and I take the chances that align with my values and my mission here, I can't be led astray. And then the loving boldly part, man, that's hard. It's hard to choose love when your default for so long has been anger or has been fear. In loving boldly, you're same with living, but loving boldly, you're gonna mess up every once in a while, and you have to be able to admit you messed up, and that you're just a human being trying to get better. And I'm gonna try to learn from this and really apply yourself to do that, so that people know that you are who you say you are, and they love that, and you love that. To be thinking of others first and trying to be of service to my fellow human being, like that is love. Or having a tough conversation with someone that I love deeply, that may not be living in a manner that is conducive to their overall well-being, and maybe doing things that are harming them. Being willing to have that conversation in a loving manner, and putting your arm around your brother or sister and saying, hey, here's what I'm seeing in you. I want to let you know that you're not alone. I love you, and I want to be here for you. If you want me to be here, how can I do that? How can I best support you during this time? That to me is like, that's a life well lived. And if I can do that, and I can continue to remind others of that, I feel like I'm possibly impacting the collective consciousness of my community and our society, and hopefully leaving it a little bit brighter than when I got here.
I feel confident that you are, man, by having conversations like this. And I as we wrap up our conversation, I mean, I find myself just wanting to say thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being willing to share the parts of you that you're proud of, and I imagine the parts of you that maybe you're not so proud of. But as you talk about living boldly and loving boldly in the time that we've gotten to invest together today, I see that in you. You are emulating that. And sometimes we don't know the impact that we ultimately have on people, but I just want you to know that you've had an impact on me today, and I'm excited for the many people that will get to hear this conversation and be impacted, and the many people that through your work and through your story and through you continuing to share that you'll continue to impact. So thank you. Thank you for being you, and thanks for investing time with me today.
Chip, you are you're a good man. I heard that your close friends and family call you that, and so um, now that I'm sitting here with you and I've gotten to talk to you, hope you don't mind that I call you Chip. I would like to say thank you for that, because what you just did right there, that's the thing that inspires me more than anything to keep going on this mission. There's been a lot of times where I'm not immune to depression or the darkness as well. Those are all things that doing the work helps me to still thrive through. But I can tell you time and time again, I have been reminded and reaffirmed by people that I'm fulfilling that mission already. And I really want to tell you thank you, because it's one of the things that I've struggled with and that I'm really leaning into right now, is finding a way to be content with the fact that I'm not able to give 100% of my time, energy, and focus to simply growing my coaching business and the Mundy Mindset brand, because I have another very important mission, and that's to fight for my life right now. To hear that even while fighting for my life and continuing to share that I'm still managing to fulfill my mission here, and I'm still managing to be guided and led by my values, and that it's not about me getting 20, 25, 30 years in this career to feel like I had made it, and being able to give myself that love and that gratitude for already having lived it and for living it every single day, regardless of how much time that I've got here, man. So thank you. And thank you for doing what you're doing here with this podcast. Because as I started to go back through and listen to these episodes, you're talking about some really transformative topics here that the world needs to hear. And I've started sharing, some of the episodes as well. So you've got a fan in me, and I look forward to growing together with you, man. And I would love to support you in any way that I possibly can, as we move through life together moving forward.
Yeah, thank you, man. That means a lot. Received, and yeah, it's amazing. You don't have to wait to impact people and wait to leave your mark, because you already are. And I think that's just an incredible thing. I really appreciate you and appreciate your time today.
Thank you, brother.
I asked members of this community and Nick's community to share a message, a story, or a memory of Nick, and here's what you shared with me.
What's going on, brother? Who's gonna carry these boats and these logs? We gonna continue to carry these boats and these logs in your honor. Thank you so much for leaving the world a whole lot brighter, a little bit, not a little bit, a whole lot brighter. You definitely changed a lot of people's lives, man. Very, very tough to see you go. At the same time, you're up there helping us fight things in the spiritual that we could not fight. So much love. So I'll see you soon. And when you went up there, I know you showed up with your shirt all sweaty, and You're tired and tired because you was down here carrying these boats and these logs. Thank you so much. I love you. I love you.
The age-old saying, quality over quantity, couldn't be more right and wrong in the season of life that we are all in today. Anyone that knew Nick knew that conversations with him were heartfelt and real, leaving you fulfilled and oddly motivated to try things that maybe before you would never have dreamt of without anxieties. That was the quality of Nick's person in a nutshell. When I met Nick, I could tell quickly that no matter what his past looked like, his current role in life was as a servant to others' health and happiness. Without me even knowing his pain, struggles, or life experiences, he immediately asked how I was, leaning in and learning all about mine, leaving me comforted and at ease, knowing it's all a mindset, all the while helping me climb out of a very dark and isolated place mentally. Nick from that point forward was always my aim point for positivity, and will remain that for not only me, but likely many others in life. Our lives, little did I know, had incredible parallels through past and current trials. The difference being, well, simply put, he was Nick. Trust me in saying that there is no one that can fulfill the void that we all now hold, which is why the age-old saying, quality over quantity, is both right and wrong. I may not have known Nick to the level of many, however, I think I can speak for anyone that has met Nick in saying that they wish they had more conversations and, quite honestly, more time. Though the flesh is no longer with us, his love and legacy will never die. He is and will always be a beautiful reminder of living in the present and in the now, and loving like you don't have a tomorrow. Nick, boldly move into your place of rest and happiness, free of pain. Watch over us that are left behind, and know you will always be loved. Cheers, my friend.
Okay. Hi, Chad. Nate here. This is the story of how a man I never met changed my life. In 2022, after a big health challenge kind of nudged me into a midlife rebuild, I moved to Sedona. I had taken a job here, and I hoped it would be the perfect entry point into the new life I was building. As it turned out, it was not. And only a few months into the experience, I knew in my gut I had to leave, which left me kind of pondering my next pivot. So as I thought about what I wanted to do next, for the first time, I removed the constraints of making the safe move, and I just really tried to tune into my heart. And I knew I wanted to be of service to people. I wanted to help them live a more fulfilled life, a more aligned life. I wanted to help them transform. And it was these insights that led me for the first time into the realm of coaching, more specifically life coaching, even though I still don't call it that because for some reason I just feel weird about that name. At this point, you're probably thinking, is this about Nick or Nate? I promise I'm getting there. It's just exposition. So I signed up for this coach training program called Lumia, founded by this edgy motorcycle riding therapist from LA named John Kim. And every year, Lumia has this event for students and alumni. It's like a retreat. And that is actually where I first came into contact with Nick Mundy. Now, I wasn't there in person. I actually missed the retreat, and I was watching Instagram stories of it because I kind of had FOMO. And my favorite instructor showed up on the stories. There were well over 100 people there, and her name is Deanna Moffat, and she was singling out this one individual who'd showed up, and she said that although he had recently received news that his cancer had returned and he was going through a lot, he showed up to this event with the most magnetic and honest and impactful energy. And I remember reading her words, listening to her speak about this person, and I was just instantly curious about who he was. His name, of course, was Nick Mundy. So at that point, I did what any normal borderline stalker would do and went to his page, and I watched pretty much every single thing that Nick made for the past couple of years. And that's really when I became infected for the first time with that energy that I'm sure anybody who listens to this will be very familiar with. When Nick spoke, I didn't hear him. I felt him. Through the depth of his experience, his struggles, and the millions of intentional shifts it took him to climb out of the darkness of his past, His connection to the words he spoke was like a tree of pure inspiration rooted in a lived experience. And thanks to that, he had this really magical way of making you aspire to be more while also holding you and really celebrating you right where you were. So I reached out to Nick right away, and we became fast friends, at least through the phone screen. We spoke about the things we were building, the health challenges we were doing our best to move on from, and just the beauty of the whole process of just living as much as we could while we were on our way. We got so fired up. We were planning endurance events and mountain treks, cold plunges, and you name it when we finally get a chance to meet. And this spring, we were supposed to do that. Nick and Shelby were going to come to Sedona. And despite him receiving heavy amounts of treatment and having an issue with his lungs, he and Shelby made it all the way here before they had to turn right back and get him to more immediate care. So that's as close as I got to meeting the man who changed my life through a screen. An individual so embodied in his purpose and his power that just hearing his voice lifted my soul. And I really don't know that I'll ever almost meet a person of Nick Mundy's caliber again. And that does make me a little sad, but it also makes me kind of happy knowing how high the bar for a human can really be. Thanks to Nick, I know I'll always be reaching for that bar. And while I'm still here, I'm going to do my very best to live and love boldly.
Hi, it's Eileen Miles here. Nick Mundy is someone who you could just feel his energy from miles and miles away. I was so honored to be able to lead him through a meditation, and I could just feel his resiliency and his strength and his softness. He was someone that truly spoke from the heart, and his wisdom will forever play in the quiet of my own mind. I always looked forward to his Instagram posts, and all of his messages were so impactful. I just know that he was a soul to know, and if you knew him, you loved him. I'm sending so much love to his family and his friends and everyone that got the experience of knowing Nick and having him in their lives. I will forever choose to have the Mundy mindset.
I've known Nick since the 7th grade, and he's always been one of my closest friends. But 10 years ago, right after he was diagnosed, I was diagnosed with a rare and incurable kidney disease. I know I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for having Nick's guidance, mentorship, love, and support unconditionally day in and day out. Through every one of my highs and lows, Nick is one of the first people I text about whatever update it's going to be. And no matter what it is, he always has had the right words to say to me in that moment. He's helped me change my perspective from being a victim and upset and angry to finding the joy in the little things and changing my attitude from I have to or poor me to I get to. I am so beyond thankful for him. I cannot ever express how much he has impacted and changed my life.
Man, I think back to when I first met Nick, back in like 2014. Neither of us had gotten sober yet. So we were partying a lot and, the facade of seeming like it was fun. But I don't know, on the inside, I was dying. I just knew it. And through a series of events, I ended up getting sober. And a couple years later, Nick ended up getting sober too. And I remember talking to him that day that he embarked on his new journey. And I remember him being full of fear, but hope at the same time. And I remember the feeling I had of being able to share my story with him and how sobriety had really given me this new way of life, this design for living. And so to watch him just soar, to watch the love and the unity with his family and all that God life had given him and all that he gave to life and continues to still do so. You know, there's this talk about believing in God as something that's like the necessity to staying sober. And it's like, I don't know. I have one more person up there that I get to pray to now and to continue to think of in a way of just wanting to live and love boldly in honor of Nick and passing that along to others.
Hi, buddy. It's Emily. I don't even know that I have the words to describe just how heartbreaking your loss is, not only to obviously your family, but your friends, your distant friends, your high school friends, your internet friends, the friends that you interacted with every day. We're heartbroken. And we're going to miss you so much. You have left an incredible legacy for your family. The intentionality you showed over the last year is admirable. You showed up for others in ways that you didn't have to, knowing what you were going through. And it's truly, truly incredible. We miss you so much. Rest easy, and we love you.